So the question was, what is the story on personal comfort over here with the iPhone device? So this is something we're investigating right now. There's a company out of San Francisco called Comfy. It's a startup firm, and they run an app that has 3 buttons. One is I'm too hot, the second one is I'm too cold, and the third one is I'm comfy. And what that does is if you say I'm too hot, it'll actually give you a 10 minute or 10 second, it'll give you a blast of cold air and then return back to the set point. And hopefully that satisfies, because it's a group that actually formed out of the LBNL and the CBE, actually, the Center for Built Environment in Berkeley. And they found that people, when they're uncomfortable, especially if they're too hot, normally it just takes a 10-minute burst of coolness to actually bring them back to normal. It's a momentary thing, and then you can reset it. But what it does is if it finds that in a particular zone people are constantly overriding it, it resets the set point. And so what we're hoping to do is actually incorporate it into, so the way this system works, I should mention, so we've got a dedicated outside air system that provides ventilation. Now if you need conditioning separate from breathing, you have 2 options. One is you can kick in a in-zone recirculating unit. It's basically a fan coil unit with a high temperature chill water coil and a low temperature hot water coil to give you additional cooling. Or you can open your windows. So it leaves it up to the occupants to pick their mode of comfort. And then what we're hoping is adding this feature to it will kind of make them interact better with the building. That one's still under deliberation. It's one of the differences between the 2 competitions. The Fed Center South project had an EUI goal as part of the competition. The 1063 project, they gave us an EUI range, but one of the scoring criteria was how low can you go. So it was in our best interest to dig for those lower numbers, just because that made us more competitive. So there was I think there was like a 40% weighting factor for sustainability for the competition, which is pretty impressive. I think it works well when there's mutual respect for each other. I think it's one that we have to watch out for as a profession to make sure that we're still engaged in the process. But I think it forces us to become creative in how we approach these solutions. The nice thing about it is you'd actually do your VE up front, right, with that, because you're not thinking about cost later on, you're thinking about cost as you're doing this. So it actually encourages creative solutions, I think. Oh, it's all stuff we have to do. None of this, there's no magic button in Revit that says populate this. So a lot of this is, so we actually created algorithms for daylighting. Some of them were subjective, some of them are objective. So things like foot candle requirements were objective, but things like sensitivity to glare might have been a little subjective to say, okay, this space is probably more sensitive than this space, and we're going to assign numbers to them. So there's ways to push data between Revit and Excel. Revit is basically a giant spreadsheet with a graphic interface, right? It's a database at the back end. So you can move back and forth between Revit and Excel quite easily. And there's different tools, there's BIM-Link. We actually have our own in-house tool that allows us to do room transfers, but there's a number of different ways in which you can do that. The advantage of doing that is you can embed your Excel file with all the formulas that you need. So I can say, and we're actually working on, I'm doing a presentation at the AIA convention in Atlanta later on, where we talk about this a little bit more. And in that one, so it's this idea of energy genetics. And so each program type has a different energy DNA footprint, so to speak. And if you can analyze that up front and push it back in, you can start to explore, things like heating, cooling. Is this space prone to overheating? The whole idea of this process is right now, there's BIM. There is no I in BIM right now. We're lacking intelligence in it, and this is kind of looking at putting the I back into BIM, putting that intelligence back in right up front. So it's not just used as a 3D modeling program. You're actually factoring in intelligence.